Hi everyone, Aiden here at the etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Hollywood Rack's Destination 2 bike rack and seeing how it fits on the back of our 2023 Chevrolet Equinox. Now this is going to be a very entry-level option for a platform-style bike rack. Platform-style meaning it holds the bike in these trays, and this one is going to have two straps down at the bottom that pull the bike down and in, as well as a frame cradle that slides up and down, can be rotated around, and has a strap that runs around the bike to hold it in place on this pad. Now, that means a couple things. Frame contact means we want to avoid carbon frame bikes, but with the way that cradle and pad can be manipulated, moved around, and rotated, it does work really well for alternative frame bikes. This bike rack also works exceptionally well for kids' bikes, so if you're considering this for a family rack, this is certainly a good option. And they make it in a 4-bike configuration, so if you need it for a family of 4, it'll work there too. Just go and get that 4-bike version. But the 2-bike version here works just as well, pretty much the exact same, it's just a little smaller. With this, it can hold up to 35 pounds per bike, which is fairly lightweight, but for most bikes out there, it's going to work just fine. If you've got an e-bike and you need something that can support heavier weights, I'd recommend checking out the Saris Freedom. It's a very similar price point, but it can support 60 pounds per bike. Otherwise, it's going to be a good pick for you for most other bikes. Now with it, it doesn't have any sort of tilting feature. So if we need access to the back of our Equinox, we are going to have to get the bike unloaded. Some other platform racks do have a tilting feature, which is really nice and convenient because we don't have to unload everything. But if you're just using this as a quick point A to point B situation, then you probably don't need access to your back unless you're already at your destination and unloading your bikes anyway. Before we unload, I do want to point out real quick just some of the closeness that we have to the vehicle. Your hitch is pretty well recessed underneath the Equinox here, and as a result, the bike handlebar comes into pretty close proximity to the window here. Now this is going to vary for every single bike out there, but on our mountain bike, we do have fairly wide handlebars. Even with our pedal down at the bottom, it is a little bit close. The handlebar would definitely hit before the pedal did, and there is a little bit of movement in here, just with this being a more budget-friendly option for a bike rack. It doesn't hold the bike as solid, so that's something to be aware of. I don't think you'll have any sort of vehicle contact, even if it is violently shaking, but that's just something to keep in mind. Now, getting it unloaded, we want to do the straps at the bottom first, pressing in the gray button on the bottom and pulling that ratcheting strap out on both sides. And that process is going to be the exact same for the frame mount. We just want to do that last because it's the thing that actually holds the bike upright. So with a hand on the bike, we can release that and then just lift it up and over that center mast and set it to the side. The center mast does certainly present an obstacle to get your bikes loaded and unloaded, but because it's pretty low to the ground and short, it's not actually too bad for actually lifting things over, especially since it's a 35-pound max weight limit. So you shouldn't be lifting any bikes that are super heavy up here. I like to replace these straps and actually leave this one open because there's a hand knob back here we can loosen, flip the plate back, and then fold the mast down to either side, using that open strap on the frame pad to actually hold it down in place and secure it to the bike rack, keeping it from just popping up completely on its own. Just makes things easier down the road. But this is what gives us our access to the back hatch. You can see with that out of the way, there's plenty of room to get in here, sit down, maybe change your shoes before or after a ride, or just get stuff out of the back. Now, if you're looking for something that does have one of those tilting features, you could check out the Swagman XTC2 Tilt. Again, very similar sort of price range, but that one has a tilting feature. I do think it's a little harder to operate though, so you get a bit of a trade-off there. For this rack, let's get some measurements. Starting off with our ground clearance, we'll do that from the end of the bike rack here because the lowest point is on the sides. With this reversed U-shaped design, we're getting about 13 3/4 of an inch of ground clearance. You do get a bit of extra rise here out of the shank, which helps get that number, and I do think it should be fine for most situations. Our distance added to the back here, it's only going to be sticking out 22.5 inches, which honestly isn't bad on its own. But if we want to leave this in the hitch between rides and save some extra space, you can fold it up against the vehicle. Coming to the pivot point where we have our threaded hand knob, take the pin out on the other side, or the clip, unthread the pin, and then re-secure it with the newly aligned holes after we fold it up, and pop the clip in on the other side. Because that threads, it's actually going to keep that pivot point just a little more solid, a lot more than it would be if it were just a standard non-threaded pin. So that's kind of nice to have. And this reduces our distance added to the back by quite a bit, only sticking out 10 inches now. So if you are pulling into a parking spot or your garage at home, you're much less likely to have clearance issues. In addition to that, it's very short, so we're not blocking our license plate at all, we're not blocking our backup camera, and we're not even close to blocking our taillights. So it's not going to interfere with your day-to-day life if you do choose to leave it on here in this position. Just keep in mind those things probably will be a bit more blocked once we put bikes on here. Now down at the hitch, we can see it's working with our 2" by 2" receiver tube using the included sleeve, but if you take that off, it'll work with 1¼ inch as well. So if you've got either one of those, it'll work. And at the hitch pin hole, it uses a threaded anti-rattle bolt that also locks up. The anti-rattle keeps it solid in the hitch, and the lock keeps it from being removed. Now overall, I think this is a really solid option. For an entry-level platform rack, it's my personal favorite. I like that it can fold up to save space. It's fairly easy to use, very lightweight and easy to get in the hitch, and like I said, it works exceptionally well with kids' bikes. So if you are looking for it as a family bike rack, you've got that option here and shouldn't have to worry too much about compatibility issues. Just keep in mind those limitations with your weight capacity. But other than that, that'll do it for a look at the Hollywood Racks destination on the back of our 2023 Chevrolet Equinox. Thanks for watching.